Hi guys, in this video we're going to be looking at a mock test from Chilwell Driving Test Centre. So as we start, we are coming out of the car park directly opposite the test centre. You'll see the building on the right hand side of the screen there, that's the test centre entry on the far side of it, the doorway, and the car park in front is where you park for your test. So as you come out onto Eldon Drive, want to be mindful of vehicles coming out from the test centre here, which is what we'd be doing on your test, and vehicles coming out from the Kia dealership on the right hand side at the end just before the lights. Now at these traffic lights we will be turning right onto the main road. As you make the turn there are two lanes, and we want to be mindful that our standard position, our default, should be the left hand side, so we turn into the left hand lane as we make that turn. Just skipping ahead because we've sat at these lights for quite a while, you'll notice the car on the right that I mentioned coming out of the Kia dealership. My pupil makes a fair decision here and just lets the car pull out to deal with the junction, and as we enter the traffic lights there's no oncoming traffic to give way to, so we're just going to go straight across. See the white car there holding up at the lights, so we're nice and clear to keep moving straight into the left hand lane, and away we go. This is a 30-mile-an-hour zone, so we want to build up that speed nice and comfortably and keep on the mirrors as we move along. Now, unfortunately, my pupil is going to make a little hiccup here. You might notice he's sitting a little bit far from the curb as we're going along. He then corrects his position as a vehicle approaches behind and allows that vehicle to use lane 2 to pass by. So whilst this could escalate quite quickly if he didn't respond to the van and correct his position, then that could escalate into a serious fault very quickly. But because he spotted the van in good time and he moved in and didn't cause the van any problems, not an issue. Straight across the lights there and straight into the left lane, watching for the lanes merging, and away we go, still in a 30-mile-an-hour zone. This one used to be 40, so some sat navs may still say 40. Don't rely on your sat nav for speed limits, look for road signs. You'll see the reminders here as we approach the speed camera saying 30 mile an hour. Now just up ahead we are going to come into a 40-mile-an-hour zone. There are some flashing lights there saying to watch out for the school, however with the time of day there's not a lot going on. I don't see too much of an issue with picking up the speed there because there's a clear view of the road ahead. As the road spreads out here, notice the markings there separating the left turn from our lane carrying on. Unfortunately I've marked my pupil with a serious fault for this here, so at this point we could move left, and that's what we should be doing. If there's a safe opportunity, we should be in that left-hand lane. However, the pupil has stayed out, and this guy behind has moved in and overtaken on the left. And unfortunately, that's got to be recorded as a serious fault on the test for not using the lanes correctly, for not being in the correct position when we're going along. Up at the traffic lights, we'll be taking a left turn, and it's quite a tight corner, so just be mindful of how you come into roads like this. And notice that it just changed to 30 here. So again, this stretch used to be 40. The sat navs might still say 40. So using the signs is really going to help. Nice tight corner in there for the pupil, and we're into a 30-mile-an-hour zone. Remember, we had an advisory for 20 there, and at the end of this road, we're going to turn left and immediately right. Now the pupil handles this junction really nicely. The idea is when you do your left turn, you tuck in to the left hand side before you do your right turn. You don't just go straight across. If you look at how the bus positions himself to turn right, this is what we want to aim for. As we pull out, we end up in that position ready for the right turn, giving way to oncoming cars. Now my pupil makes a fair choice here. He hangs back for the cars from the left to clear off, and then he deals with it in one movement, and that's absolutely fine. He could have pulled out and waited, but equally what he did I didn't see an issue with, so that's absolutely perfect. See how he tucks in and then makes the right turn. He doesn't just beeline straight across. Mindful of pedestrians on corners there because he was turning in, and the way that happened I didn't mark a fault there, but the hierarchy says that we should give way to pedestrians or give them the opportunity to cross. So I'm not too worried about that one. The pedestrian was very aware, so the pupil handled that really nicely, and stopping in that position would have been very difficult too. Up this road, of course, we've got the speed ramps. We're still in the 30 zone, but the pupil's keeping a nice lowered speed as we go over these speed ramps. We want to make sure the car isn't bouncing up and down too roughly. We're looking after the suspension and the tyres and the steering, because if you hit those speed ramps too fast, you are going to do some damage to them. Up ahead, you can see the parked cars. So the pupil does a really nice job checking the mirrors and weaving through these gaps really nicely, looking for oncoming cars. There's nothing coming, of course. We've got this taxi awkwardly parked inside the junction. Just be mindful of vehicles like that, because they can just move off without much warning when they're parked in positions like that. Up ahead, we've got a couple of parked cars, and again, I'm just going to go through nice and smoothly, watching the mirrors. The pupil again does a really nice job here, using the mirrors and adapting the speed before pulling up on the left to do his hill start. Now, whenever you do a hill start, my advice is put the car in park if it's automatic, or handbrake and neutral if it's manual, and then just have a moment to reset before you move on again. And when you do move on, don't dwell on whatever's happened beforehand. Any of the mistakes you've made, if you linger on them, you're not going to concentrate on what's next. As he moves out there, really good movement, getting into position, maybe a little exaggerated on the movements, but not to the point it's really a problem. Blind spots were covered and he got up to speed really nicely. Coming up to the end of the road, we'll be taking a right turn. So again, the examiners are looking out for mirrors and signal checks in good time, that the speed is adapted on approach, and that you'll look into the left and the right before you cross over that giveaway line into the new road. So again, the pupil does really nicely at that. His observations are absolutely spot on with this junction. Very patient. He's waiting for a car to turn from the right there, just making sure it turns before he pulls out. I know that wasn't visible on the camera there, so that's why I thought I'd point it out. Again, 30-mile-an-hour road, but we've got speed ramps, so you can see the speed here. The pupil is keeping it down under 20. He's not really creeping up very much, and every speed ramp is just bringing that speed down nice and smoothly in good time. What we don't want to be doing is accelerating quite harshly and then braking quite harshly. We want nice smooth movements, so carrying a reduced speed is going to help with that, and just relaxing off the power in good time and then gently back on it when we cross that ramp. If you can avoid using brakes doing this, brilliant, because that will make it even smoother. The natural deceleration of the car is going to make it just really calm and really controlled. So the guy on the right there leaning out the car, so just mindful of people who have got the backs to you as well. If they step backwards as they stand up, that could be a problem, of course. So again, reduce speed as you're dealing with anything like that. Parked cars on the right, vans even, and as we go past these, again, just looking for oncoming vehicles that might compromise our safety by carrying on through that gap. As we come around the bend, we've got the junctions, more parked cars. It's quite a busy road for parked cars, so you do have to look ahead and deal with the oncoming vehicles quite safely. As you can see, the pupil's taking his time here, just nice and gently around the bend, and this is why. And the other car there responds to our presence there by tucking in and letting us through. So it's just a case of negotiating with those oncoming cars, making sure that you know what each other's doing, and that if it's safe to, you can let the other car go. Again, see the oncoming car, just going round the parked one. My pupil, again, plenty of space there, so there's nothing really to worry about. And again, up ahead, we've got more vehicles, we've got oncoming cars, we've got a van, and this situation gets a little bit tricky here. See the car on the right pulling out. The van wants to turn in, but can't until that silver car's gone. So my pupil makes the sensible choice to just let that Mercedes cross and let the van out of the way before they have a clear gap to move in. Notice the keep clear just on the bottom there. So we want to be careful not to stop in that if we can't get out the other side. Another reason to just look ahead, scan for markings and signs, any information on the road, and show the examiners that you're using the road effectively and safely. So that's a brilliant example of forward thinking from my pupil there. Again, as we come around the bends, just be mindful of parked cars that may be around the bends. There we go, on the right there, and pedestrians nearby. So again, just low speed. You can see the pupils keeping it well under 20 there. And then as we approach the end of the road, we're going to be turning left. This turn's quite a hard one to see. You can see the car on the left there queuing up. There is a right turn and a set of traffic lights just around the corner. So we want to make sure we're seeing them before we pull out onto that new road. So Lots of observations here. Now the pupil spotted something quite far away here that he made a really good choice just to wait it out rather than pulling out and dealing with it on the road. So anything you see like this, any blue light vehicles you see, just be patient, let them clear the way and then carry on. The idea with blue light vehicles is just to let them pass safely. Don't rush and panic to get out of the way. Let them deal with it safely. See the Peugeot on the left there reacting to the police car, how late the reaction was compared to what my pupil spotted. He was at the junction, he could see the blue lights pretty much straight away. And again, we're just watching for these cars on the right in particular. On the right here, there's an exit to Lidl, and sometimes people pull out and just boot it away from that. So you want to be very mindful of that too. And as you come out, watching those lights that they're not going to change and catch you out. Again, more parked cars, so we're looking up, picking a good space to go through, plenty of room. The pupil's speed is absolutely spot on there. There's not really a lot to say down this road. The pupil's keeping a really good speed. He's frequently looking at the mirrors and his position is absolutely spot on as we go down here. There's no kind of weaving in or out or drifting. He's really smooth, really well controlled. This lad is really close to passing his test, but as you've seen from earlier on, a bit more experience with the lane discipline, and he's going to absolutely nail it. It's just making sure we don't make silly mistakes like that on our test, because one silly mistake is all it takes to fail your test. Up ahead we can see a little bit of traffic, and we've got a set of traffic lights. Now these traffic lights are going to be taking a right turn onto the Derby Road, the A52. Shortly after that we'll be turning right at the roundabout and then making another right turn. So the pupil again deals with this really nicely. We've got some red lights and he's bringing his speed down nice and early, looking around in those mirrors really well and positioning beautifully. Notice the car on the left here, just a little far back from the line. Notice the 40 sign as well as we come up to the end. So we've got to be quite aware of what's going on. The 40 sign, of course, as you come out, you'll see reminders as you go along telling you it's still 40. The car on the left there, I'm not sure why they're sat so far back, but be careful not to do that yourself, because if you're sat in a position that invites cars to pull in front of you, that's going to create a high risk and that could potentially cost you your test. So right up to those stop lines when we come up to traffic lights. Again, while you're sat there, just keep looking at the mirrors, keep glancing around, be aware of what's going on around you and anything coming up behind. Particularly there could be bikes, motorbikes, push bikes, scooters creeping up on you that could end up on your sides as you're about to move off. So very conscious of what's around you. And then as we come out of the road, the normal position is the leftmost position. We've got a bus lane there that's 24/7, so we don't want to go in that. So the pupils took up a really nice position before the roundabout that's up ahead, where we'll be turning right. Again, when you know you're going to be moving over, mirrors and signal, and over you go nice and gently. Now some modern cars, a lot of them even have these soft touch indicators, courtesy indicators, where if you knock the signal they'll flash 3 times. So the fault there for signals correctly was my learner signalled right, moved into the lane, and then as he cancelled the signal he accidentally put the left signal on, and then went to cancel that and accidentally put the right signal on. So because the signals were a little bit all over the place there, could cause confusion to vehicles behind, so it's got to go down as a driver fault. Notice the arrows here, how we have to use the third lane to turn right. We can't turn from the middle or left lane, so you've got to make sure you're in the correct position when you approach. If you're not in that right hand lane and your intention is to go right, you find yourself in the middle lane for example, do not turn right, just go straight ahead. It will bring you off onto another road. You'll have to sort out what's going on the other side and just carry on, and it's the examiner's responsibility to get you back en route. So do not panic if you go the wrong way or find yourself in the wrong lane. Just do it nice and safely, nice and calmly. As we come around the curve, notice the lights here, and there's another set of lights just as you come around the corner. So every entry onto this roundabout is traffic light controlled. And as we're coming off the roundabout, it was good mirror use, the signals are on, and he's kept the right hand position ready for the right hand turn up ahead, which I've told him about. So if there's a turn that you need to position for in advance that you'd need to know about, the examiners will tell you. Notice the car on the right there in the middle of the verge. So that's where we're turning, and it's going to bring us straight across into the road opposite. So we've got to give way to the traffic that's coming from the left here. And as you can see, the car on the far side has give way to this car in front of us to let them cross before moving. That's created a bit of an issue with the pedestrian. So we won't want to put ourselves in a situation like that. My pupil again is doing a really nice job just holding behind that give way line, giving himself a good view of what's going on. There shouldn't be traffic coming from the right, but there's no harm doing a cursory check just to make sure nobody's coming the wrong way up the dual carriageway. And just patience. If there's cars coming and you can't find a safe gap, don't get stressed about not going. Just sit, relax, and wait for a safe gap. When you're waiting for a long time, you can feel the pressure build up quite quickly, and sometimes people will rush for a gap that just is not big enough. And this is kind of pandering to the examiner. So the car invited us there. So just nice and patient until you've got a definite gap. Don't rush. As we come down this road, loads of parked cars. So again, we've got to look way down the road, checking those mirrors and just making sure we move out safely around each of those vehicles, and we're prepared for any oncoming cars. As we come up, there's a bend here as well. Again, with the parked cars on the right, this can be quite a risky one. So we want to take our time as we go around that bend. Now, I've asked my pupil to pull over and then drive on again. Again, just pick a safe place, mirrors and signal, pull up to the curb, park the car, put it in neutral or park if it's automatic, and take a moment to reset, take a moment to refocus on what you're doing and move on, not forgetting that blind spot when it's safe. Now, unfortunately, up ahead, my learner is going to make another serious fault, and it's a really, really silly one. So we're taking the next road on the left, and this road that we're on has priority. So the turning is quite hidden behind this hedge on the left, but notice how my pupil slows down and gives way to the car on the right, even though we have priority and we're not crossing paths. He could have just went straight into that turn. You've got to be prepared, of course, to give way here, but we want to get into that turn nice and confidently and then give way to the oncoming there before coming around the parked cars. These parked cars are almost always there, so if you come down this road, make sure you're going nice and slow and you're ready for those oncoming cars. Don't pull around those cars until you've got a safe gap. Again, we're just following the road ahead. You see the oncoming car, it's not going to be an issue. And we're going to follow the road round the bend and then turn left at the very end of the road. So notice how the markings guide my learner to the right side of this junction, and then watching out for the car door there, of course, giving plenty of room. His mirror use, his speed again were really, really good. And then at the end of the road, see the white lines here? This is coming up to the end. It's a give way line, and we're going to turn left. Be mindful of cars coming in who might swing wide, and be mindful on this junction. It is very, very tight. So as you can see, my learner's come right down to a stop and he's crept out really, really carefully, just checking both sides before he pulls out. Again, with both cars on the side here, we've got to be aware of the oncoming traffic, and we've got to give way to anyone already on that road. So don't just launch out into gaps like that. Take your time. Another bend here with parked cars either side. So again, we just want to be mindful of cars coming the other way that may not be positioned correctly. We can't see what's around the bend till we get closer, so we want to be cautious when we've got that. Again, my pupil, his speed is really good here, his mirror use is really good, and he's just taking his time down this road, keeping an eye on what's going on. This next crossroad, you'll notice the give way lines either side of it, and the warning sign on the left there saying that we've got priority to go straight. But again, it's a poor view junction, so just have a cursory glance as you're going by. Make sure no one's going to launch out of those sides and cut you up. And straight down the middle of the road, we can see the car going away from us in the distance. So we've got a nice clear run all the way down this road. The car on the right there, if you can see the headlight in the distance, he's waiting really patiently there. He's made no effort to pull out, so my pupil's done the right thing here and continued. If they create a gap for you, keep going. However, if they start to move or there's any uncertainty, be defensive. And we've got another oncoming car. See, he flashed, so we're going to take our time into that gap on the left where they're waiting. Just like this, my pupil was really slow as he come round. It's not the best place to invite us through, but that's what the car has done, so my pupils took advantage of what the car's done. If my pupil stopped and didn't take advantage of the gap, that could cause a problem of confusion with the other car. So as soon as that car flashed and said they were going to wait, he's picked the gap and he's went for it, and that's absolutely spot on. At this junction, my pupil is going to make another mistake. This is to do with lane discipline. It's quite a common error. So you see the left only signs and markings. And as we turn left, we've got two lanes, the left lane for straight, the right lane for right, and we're meant to be turning right. So we should pull straight into lane 2 as we go. However, as you see here, my pupil pulls into lane 1. He then checks his mirrors and signals and moves over into lane 2. Now, I've only recorded a driver fault because he moved over just enough to keep lane 1 clear, and he didn't cut anyone up while he's doing this. He's moved quite safely relative to the conditions. However, the ideal there, if you're not in that right-hand lane, just go straight. The examiner will reroute you. If you end up in the right-hand lane as you come out, that's absolutely spot on. Next junction here, again, the pupils are really nicely. We're going straight on. Just notice that sign on the left which says left lane for straight, right lane for right. So again, this is a one-way street. If you're coming down here, you need to be in that right lane if you're going to turn right. And as you turn, you go into the left position again because it's a two-way street. I say two-way, it's one way for cars, but trams can come the other way, so you don't want to be on the right. Mind the cyclist on the left there, of course. The pupil spotted him, and the cyclist was giving way, so it gave the pupil a really good opportunity to carry on. And up ahead, with all the parked cars, again, the pupil's adapting the speed really nicely. We've got a good view of what's ahead. There's nothing going on. We've just got to go around those parked cars. So he's on the mirrors and he's straight out there, all the way to the end of the road where we can turn right. Now, this junction catches a lot of people out as well because there's a set of lights just to the right, if you can see them there, where them lights can be really helpful in that if they change, you can pull out over the traffic from the right because they'll be stopped. And you can join into the road if someone from the left creates the space to do it. However, if you miss those lights and you just pull out and go, you're going to be jumping a red light. The examiner is going to intervene. So be very conscious of those traffic lights on the right as you pull out. It's really important always to look at where you're going as well as what's coming. So don't just get too focused on the traffic. Look at what you're driving into as well. So those traffic lights on the right. Look for pedestrians who might give you a clue as to whether they're going to change or not. And then be safe and progressive as you go out onto that new road. It's a really busy road, so as you can see, my pupil's waiting for quite a while before he pulls out. Like I said earlier, don't let that wait cause you to feel rushed or pressured. Now his position's a little bit off as he pulls out of there, but I'm not going to mark it because there's no real issue in what he's done. He checks his mirrors, he's very conscious of what's going on, and he recorrects it, repositions as he moves on really nicely. So I didn't mark that as a fault because the mirror use was good because it was done at a low speed and it didn't cause any problems. It was not worth recording in my opinion. Up ahead, we've got the van pulling out on the left. Probably not the best choice, but my pupil does really nicely, just lowering the speed to give the van some room. So if anyone pulls out on you, just relax, slow yourself down. It's not about the fault that they've made, it's how you respond to it that matters. So if you don't respond appropriately, you're going to get marked. Pupil did really nicely, and as we come up to the lights, he's positioned in the correct lane to go straight. The ideal position is always the left. You can use the right if you're overtaking. For a situation like this, I don't see it as beneficial. It could be if you're feeling confident or if the car in front is turning left. If you're feeling confident that you could get ahead of that car quite safely, quite easily, then that would be fine. But being in that lane wouldn't be a fault in itself as long as you move in safely when it's safe to do so. So always go for the left lane if it's open to you. It just makes it so much simpler. And again, when those lights change, remember to check your mirrors, watch out for cyclists, watch out for e-scooters, that kind of thing that could be sneaking up in the traffic. I've left this in because when you're sat at a red light for this long with the examiner, the sense of awkwardness can kind of come in. There's no real, sometimes there's no chatter, and you're just sat in silence, staring at the traffic. You've got to keep yourself focused on what you're doing, of course. Don't let that atmosphere of kind of tension, if there is any, don't let that get in your head. You just focus on driving, because when you get to the end of your test, you'll hop out the car and you'll hopefully never have to see that examiner again. So don't let them get in your head. As you can see here, the lanes merge. Pupils do really nicely is positioning behind the blue car, using the blue car as his position, his marker, and keeping pace with it. His mirror use is really good, watching for cars on the right. And again, he's looking ahead at the lights in the junction, spotted the moped in good time as well. My pupil couldn't have done anything differently, but like you're seeing there on the with the moped, the mirror use is absolutely imperative, because if you miss something like that and you could prevent a problem, then that's going to be on you. If you noticed it a moment ago, there was a red sign on the left. Now it said speed limit. There's a new 30 mile an hour speed limit in force. So this road registers on my Sat Nav still as 40 mile an hour. Don't rely on your Sat Nav for speed limits again. Look for road signs, look for repeaters as you go along, and use them to dictate what you're doing. Sometimes the cars can pick up the speed limits as well. My car displays it on the dashboard sometimes. Again, don't depend on that, because sometimes it can pick up signs that don't apply to you. The traffic lights here, we've got a left lane for straight and left and our right for right, so whatever position is taken, just make sure you're fully in your lines as you do this. Now if I recall, we're turning left here and there is a filter light on the left. It's going to tell you that you can go straight and left from that side. The right hand light, if you look at the far side of the junction, is going to work separately for the right turn only, so be very mindful of those when you're driving up to traffic lights. Be very mindful that those lights may not apply to you and that you're looking at the correct traffic lights. If you're sat here looking at the one on the right, it's going to stay red longer than the one on the left, and you're going to sit there like a lemon when the lights change. So there we go, we can go straight and left. Again, lots of mirror use as we move away. The pupil does really nicely with this, and just watching as we enter that new road, you can see the 30 sign, just reinforcing it to 30 mile an hour zone. And we're just looking up for the parked cars. Lots of mirror use when we move around, and the bends, of course. Just being mindful of that what could be around there might cause us to have to slow down or change our position. So again, the pupil is really nicely coming along here. He's making good progress for the conditions. He's using the mirrors regularly, and he's keeping himself tucked in. Note the pedestrian there jogging in the road as well. Just be mindful of them. If you can give them room, give them room. Again, there's plenty of room there. They hopped up on the path in plenty of time. I don't see an issue in that. This bit here, the bend, is quite a tricky one with the parked cars on it. There's almost always a Hyundai parked on the right here. So as you come around, just watching for oncoming vehicles before you move out into the middle of the road. Again, the pupil does really nicely. You notice the speed coming down. He's checking his mirror as well. I know you can't see that on the camera, but he's checking his mirrors really, really well as we go down here. And he's looking well ahead for oncoming cars. So absolutely spot on down here. Now in a moment, I'm going to get my pupil to pull over, and then we're going to do a parallel park, reverse parking maneuver. So we're going to pull up next to the parked car in front, and then we're going to reverse and finish up near the curb within 2 car lengths. The examiners will always pull you over, and they'll explain the maneuver before you do it. They won't just do the maneuver as you're going along. And the same with the emergency stop. They'll always pull you over before they ask you to do anything like this. I think we did an angle start here and then moved on, and then moved up to one of the cars further along to our reverse park. So, I mean, again, it's just a case of the examiners want to see lots and lots of shoulder checks and observations, and they want to see you going nice and slowly as you move the car back into position, and just coordinating that steering and positioning really, really well, finishing in a good position. If you're too far from the curb, correct it, and if you're too close to the curb, shuffle forward and make some space. But while you're doing it, take your time and just keep them eyes moving. Now, unfortunately for my learner, he didn't do too well on this one, and I thought it was a little bit harsh here because we haven't practiced this maneuver as much as the others. So we pull up next to this blue Ford, and it puts in reverse. His initial observations were okay, but as we reversed back, he's not looking over his right shoulder enough. Now, notice the odd position here as well. He starts pulling out, and I think he got a bit muddled with the maneuver, with this maneuver in the reverse bait park, because I teach the 45-degree method where you pull up by the space and then swing out before reversing in. So I think there was a little bit of confusion there and uncertainty in what he was doing, and as a result, he just ended up in this really awkward position. As he come back, he also doesn't quite go deep enough into the curb before correcting the steering, so he ends up quite uncomfortably wide from the curb. So these are what the serious faults are for. It's the positioning at the end of the maneuver. The initial movement was a bit iffy and unnecessary, and of course the observations. He's very focused on the left hand side of the car, and he's not looking over the right hand side enough. So you've got to make sure you cover both shoulder checks, both sides, and frequently, because if you don't, you're going to get marked for observations. In particular, in this situation, we actually had a car behind waiting after it pulled up to do the maneuver. So because there's a car there, it increases that risk, and you have to make sure you're checking over that shoulder and keeping an eye on what that car's doing. And you see we're quite wide in terms of our position too. He does try and correct it, but the correction's not enough, and that again is why it has to go down as a serious fault. He's too wide from the curb when he finished, and he doesn't fix it. Now at this point my pupil was getting a little frustrated at the maneuver and decided to just call it a day and move on. And that's absolutely fine. It will result in a fail, of course, if you don't complete the maneuver, but if you're really struggling, you know, it's one of them things, unfortunately. If it gets the better of you, sometimes it's better just call it a day, head back, and then, you know, that's the end of it. Move on and just try again another day. So don't feel too disheartened if you don't pass your test. It's not the end of the world. You can always do it again. You're not going to lose anything. It just means it takes a little longer to gain what you want to. As we go along, again, plenty of parked cars, so lots and lots of mirror use and good positioning and progress as we go along. This pupil, despite what he's just done with the parallel park, he's straight back onto it, really focused on what he's doing again. And his driving is really good, so it's good composure that he's demonstrating here. If you do make a mistake, you don't want to dwell on it, you want to just move on, leave it behind you, and you can always discuss it later with the examiner if you're concerned about it. It might not even go down as a serious fault when you think it does. I've had pupils who give up after making a driver fault and then make serious faults because they give up on mock tests and on their actual tests. So don't be too disheartened if you do make a mistake. It may not be recorded as seriously as you expect it to be. as we come through here, you can see the pupil giving way to the oncoming car there. Again, really well planned. He spotted it nice and early. He's on the mirrors and he's holding back. That's exactly what the examiners want to see. Another double junction here, going right and immediately left. So as you do the right turn, the trick is to tuck in to that left curb just as you're coming into the second turn. It's a really, really poor view here. So again, you can see the pupil holds back really nicely before pulling out, making sure he can see before he crosses that road. Again, we're pulling up on the left here, and whilst it's not ideal being opposite the junction there, it is a dead end, it's got a good view and it's a quiet road, so I'm not too concerned about where his position in that sense. What does bug me, and this is an easy one to do, is when you're moving off, it's so easy to forget to check that right shoulder, and that's what he does on this occasion. And especially with the road there, if there was something coming out of that road, it could be in his blind spot and it could cause a really high risk. There was nothing around, that's why it's gone down as a driver fault. But yeah, just got to make sure you check that right shoulder just before you go. It is a little bit tight coming around here as well. So as you come around this road at the end, just nice low speed, you can see the massive white building at the end. That's going to bring us back onto the main road right by the test centre. So we'll be taking a left turn and then left at the traffic lights, and that'll bring us back into the test centre. It's got more than one lane as we take that turn. So again, just make sure you're using the left-hand lane unless your intention is to turn right or overtake. And if you're going to overtake, make sure you've got room to come back in before you make any other turns. So again, nice and patient here. It's quite a busy road and it's quite a steep hill coming out of here as well, so you've got to be very mindful of the car potentially rolling back, particularly if you're in a manual vehicle. If you don't have the clutch and the power balanced well, it's going to roll back on you, so you've got to make sure you've got a little bit of revs in there and make sure you're finding that bite effectively. With an auto, not such a big issue. If you've got a handbrake, manual handbrake, then you can always use that to help you and prevent rolling back. My car doesn't, it's fully automated, so it's a case of the car will do it all for you. So again, you can see him holding back here before pulling out, just allowing that last car to pass, which is absolutely spot on. Just shows really good observations as coming up to that junction and really good planning. And we're taking a left at the traffic light back into Elm Road. This is quite a tight corner, so you can see my pupil slows down really well. He keeps his position nice and tight. Be very careful not to swing out before you turn because it is narrow there too. And then we're going to turn right into the test centre, and he's unfortunately making another driver fault. As he turns in, it is a two-way car park, as you can see from the car coming out. But as he comes in, he's just going to position too far over. It is clear view and it's not marked as two-way, so I'm going to give him benefit of the doubt there, but he corrects it straight away as well before it's an issue. So again, just make sure you're tucked in as you come into the car park. It is a two-way car park. As you come up to this corner as well, you'll see my pupil slow right down before we turn in, and that learner there is exactly why we don't want to come rushing around that blind corner. So that's the end of our mock test video. If you've enjoyed this and found it useful, please like, share and subscribe. And thank you for watching, and God bless.